So welcome everyone. It's so fun to see your faces, particular group of people. It's just lovely to see you. So um, this week, we're gonna work with the teachings called the 7 Points of Mind Training. And before I introduce it, I just wanted to say that these particular teachings I've found just immensely helpful in my life. So I really hope that they are for you too, and just a sort of different way to orient us toward difficulty that feels really skillful to me. So this week, we're going to dive into the more, what I think, provocative, but also eminently practical teachings of Tibetan Buddhism. If you're like me, they will push your buttons, I think, I expect, and plumb the depths of your emotional experience. And they have the potential to transform our places of difficulty into the experience of loving acceptance and skillful action. So when Zen master Yunmen, who lived around the year 900, was asked, what is the teaching of an entire lifetime? And this is like my favorite way currently of describing practice or all of the Dharma. He answered famously, an appropriate response. So I think this sums up the entire point of practice with the goal of living a meaningful and harmonious life. And the reason this is so important is I think for a while, I wasn't sure what the point, I may have been practicing all the time, but I'm not sure what I thought the point was, like to sort of become different, to become special, to become, I'm not sure, maybe that sounds silly said out loud, but what was going on underneath was something like that rather than becoming becoming better at life, which is now what I think practice is actually for. Um, so throughout our lives, really on a daily basis, we're presented with circumstances and situations. And with practice, we can respond with clarity and integrity, compassion and resilience. And that's what these teachings are for, these particular teachings, and I think all of them. So the teachings we're going to explore this week come from the great Indian Buddhist teacher Atisha, who lived around the year 1000. And by the way, these teachings he may have learned them in Bali, but that's like just an opinion. It's not like proven, but for those of you who are Bali addicts like me, I think that's just kind of, I like to imagine that that's where he was learning them. But it could have been somewhere else. That's just one theory. So the teachings are organized around 7 points. We'll do 1 point each day. And the points contain 59 slogans, although you'll see they're distributed completely randomly. So it's not even close to even. Every day has between 1 and like 21 slogans. So as all great teachings of Tibetan Buddhism, they present a combination of wisdom and compassion. And that's sort of a definition of any Tibetan Buddhist teaching, is it's going to always have both sides. We can work then to improve our understanding of the world and ourselves, that's the wisdom side, and work to gradually open and free our hearts, that's the compassion side. And one without the other just doesn't tend to be applicable or all that helpful. So the teaching is called Lojong, which literally means mind training, although Trungpa Rinpoche translates it as intelligence training. I kind of like that too. It emphasizes compassion and communication and our relationship with other people. So very practical. It's supported by the Tonglen meditation practice. You've all probably done Tonglen before in some form, although this will be less simple probably than, have more aspects than I had practiced before I started studying it. So Tonglen means giving and taking, or sending and receiving. That's like the literal translation of the word. So the 59 slogans are instructions on how to be in the world in order to interrupt escalating reactivity and to bring a fresh take to the dynamics of a challenging situation or emotion. The Tonglen meditation practice trains us to relate compassionately to that we usually push away and to share what we normally hold dear, or what we do hold dear. So this revolutionary orientation towards life leads to freedom and to openness. The training is designed so that we become less reactive to be able to see things more clearly in daily life. And we're relying on the neuroplasticity of our minds to move from self-centered habitual tendencies to the greater field of tenderness and strength. In this way, we're more able to act based on appreciation than from the cycle of hope and fear. We transcend habits of grief and blame and find a sense of creativity and openness. So what's so interesting and transformative about Lojong and Tonglen is that we take the unwanted aspects of our lives and use them to awaken genuine compassion. So we're actually like looking for those places and working with those places. We start with ourselves, and then we put ourselves in other people's shoes. In the process, we realize our kinship and connection to all beings. So that's a big part of this training. Pema Chodron describes Lojong this way. She says, when closing down, here are instructions on how to open. When holding back, here are instructions on how to give, how to be there for others without withdrawing. So this is big stuff. Taking those moments when we would shut down and, sort of hide from the situation in whatever way, right? We have different ways of doing that. These are literal instructions on how to open in those moments. So this has a lot of power to transform conflict, situations, relationships, and, how we feel. So we'll begin with the first point of mind training today, which is to train in the foundations. So we start with the foundational aspects of our minds that need cultivation in order to embark on this journey of awakening the heart. The first point has only one slogan, which is first, train in the preliminaries. The preliminary practices that basically what I'm choosing to do. So there's so much great commentary on these 7 points because they're short. It's kind of like the Yoga Sutras or something, they're pithy instructions. So, you look to the commentaries to figure out what a teacher was talking about, and everyone has different opinions then on what the different slogans mean. And in Tibetan, just for those of you who have studied Tibetan Buddhism, preliminaries, there's like 8 in the tradition I trained in, and there can be 12. It can be a quite complex thing. And a lot of people point to those complex preliminaries, but I'm gonna stick with something simple that I think what really matters for this particular practice is two practices, 2 things we're gonna focus on. One is mindfulness and one is self-love. So I'm gonna say that's what he means by the first slogan. And some books will agree with me and some won't. And, that's kind of the fun thing about working with old texts when you have no idea and you can't ask them. So mindfulness is the foundation for pretty much everything. Once you're practicing right, you realize that the more complicated you get in what you learn, you keep coming back to having to use mindfulness to do it anyway. It's sort of like, if you need one thing, that's the thing. So, why, now that I've made that plug for mindfulness, I love that we don't have a beginner group here, so I can ask you real questions. Like, why do you think mindfulness might be the foundation for this? Why would it be important?
I don't know if we should raise our hands or how we do that, but I would say because first you have to be aware of what's even happening.
Yeah, I was going to say pretty much the same thing, that with mindfulness, I feel that I'm more aware and present, and then I'm less reactive. And that's a biggie for me.
Yeah.
Just to not react.
Yeah. So it's impossible to explore our difficulties without training to be calm, clear and attentive, right? Or else we're just going to freak out every time we start to go there. We get frazzled and narrow-minded, honestly, whenever our buttons are pushed, right? And our objectivity and our perspective go out the window. So we want to know that, right? And it's not like that's just us, that's everybody. Everybody's doing that, right? So so we need to be able to work with that, set of circumstances. So mindfulness meditation trains us to stay present for our experience while remaining relaxed. So that's the first key. But there's also this other interesting side to mindfulness, which is that we're cultivating what's called reflexive awareness, meaning awareness about our own internal being, which isn't something, some of us were raised more introspective than others, sure, but this is literally training in that, which is incredibly powerful. So we get to know our inner world of sensations and feelings without rejecting anything. That's kind of the premise of mindfulness. And through that training, we learn to be easy with unease in our body and easy with unease in our mind. So with mindfulness training, we can learn to gently and slowly tolerate our difficult emotions without flying off the handle or shutting down. We can get to know them and so understand them with compassion and with care. And then instead of reacting to them, we can slowly over time begin to relate to them in a healthy way. So that then they're not actually a problem. Then they're interesting. They're information more than problems. Plus, with mindfulness practice, they won't last as long, which, while they might be helpful, you're also not the most fun thing in the world. So author Andrew Holacek writes, "The untrained mind sticks to everything." So mindfulness practice has been shown to reduce what's called stickiness in psychological or at least neuropsychological terminology, meaning the length of time that a negative emotion sticks around. I mean, that's enough reason to practice mindfulness right there. So it turns out that by actually feeling our feelings, instead of avoiding our feelings, we can move on to other things instead of using all of our energy to stuff things down, which if you think about it, if you use all your energy to stuff something down now, what are you going to have to do in 5 minutes? Use all your energy to stuff that thing down. It's sort of this ongoing thing. And then the more things we're stuffing down, the more energy it takes to do that. And all of a sudden I'm exhausted just not feeling stuff, or trying not to feel stuff. Who knows how even successful I am at it. So this is much more relaxing and it gives us the opportunity to actually do other things. So why all of this focus on our challenges? Because I think that's part of why, maybe Buddhism doesn't sound all that fun. Although maybe the people don't like Buddhism is they think it's only about suffering, but this is sort of what that's about, right? Is turning toward our challenges. So the places of difficulty in our lives are our opportunities for growth, right? So we need to be able to stay with them. I mean, and when I say growth, I mean, not just like growing to, maybe be a better person, but also to enjoy our lives, actually, to find ways to ease the places where we don't maybe enjoy our lives. So this takes practice to turn toward the unwanted parts of our lives. And it takes once you start doing it, you see the benefit, then it's a lot easier to sell. But right in front, it might not be that easy to sell to your own mind, like when you first hear about this. I know none of you are beginning practitioners, but still. The benefit, however, is that we then have the opportunity to use our problems to awaken our hearts. And that's the premise of this practice and, of Buddhism, I guess, in general. So that's mindfulness. Our second preliminary is self-love. And again, this is the preliminary for pretty much everything. In my latest yoga teacher training, we were going around in a circle and saying, what is yoga? And Kirsty, who was assisting the class sitting next to me, said, it's training in self-love. And I was like, oh yeah, it is actually. I hadn't even thought of that. This is the preliminary for everything. So why do you guys think that self-love is so important? Or maybe you don't. Any thoughts? Holly?
I think that self-love is just that it's really the hardest love to practice in many ways, because it's easy to turn to others and see the beauty, but the conversation we have internally with ourselves is really the conversation we're having with the world. And when we can see how harsh we are sometimes with our own being, our own physical being, our own, and not being comfortable in our house, and this is the only house we have to live in, so to love it is really, like, for me, the ultimate in being peaceful.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah. And
Debbie?
then when we're peaceful within ourselves, we can be peaceful with other people, but it starts at home. But Holly, you said that beautifully. I was going to say something else, but you said it all in much better way.
Beautiful. And
Yeah, that was really beautiful, Holly. Thank you for that. And then I think as we're looking, for me, as I'm looking,
you're hard to hear, Ange. Can you?
am I?
Yeah. Oh, now you're better.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay. Um, for me, like when I'm looking in at those deeper, harder things to look at, the more self-love that's there, then it makes it easier and easier to go deeper and deeper, but without that basis of really appreciating and loving myself and all the quirks and weirdness and stuff, it's just hard, I just want to avoid it.
So beautiful, you guys. So good. So, this has all kind of already been said, but I'll say it anyway. Um, because our relationship to ourself is our primary relationship, it's the one we engage most with, since we're usually around, right? When we're somewhere, we tend to be there. It's like, how do you want your primary relationship to feel? The one that you spend the most time in. Plus, we're habitual creatures. As Debbie said, ultimately, how we treat ourselves turns out to be very much like how we treat other people. And, for you guys or whoever's listening to the recordings, that may not seem so true like up front. So if that doesn't ring true to you, I encourage you to kind of sit with it for a week or a month and then see. And you're welcome to reject absolutely anything I say. But this one, I think, takes a little adjusting to the thought to see whether it's true or not, because I've had people say I don't think so and then come back to me months later and be like, oh yeah I saw that actually, because it can seem like we're kinder to other people on the surface, but then eventually the way we criticize ourselves tends to come out toward other people anyway. So, and everything I say, by the way, I should have said this even before, it's just things for you to consider. It's not things to take as beliefs. So if something rings true to you, great. And if it doesn't, throw it out. Okay. So Dale Borglum teaches the following, and I think this is super instructive on, just considering self-love. He says every time he teaches to a group, he first asks, how many of you have looked at another person with so much love that tears came to your eyes? And most people have had that experience. And then he asks, how many of you have looked in the mirror and had the same experience? So if we haven't been trained to look at ourselves with unconditional love and tenderness, now is a great time to start to improve that relationship. It honestly is incredibly freeing to do so, in that we have the opportunity to focus on other things instead of constantly wrestling with or stuffing down that which we don't like in ourselves. And, similar to my mindfulness argument, it just takes a lot of energy to be constantly like, avoiding this corner of myself and that side of myself and judging this and wrestling with that. I mean, it's exhausting. It's time consuming. It's really self-involved, actually. I mean, we're all doing it all the time and we can't help it, but to every time we sort of start loosen that pattern, it's just like, it's creates a lot of space even just to do other things and focus on other things. So instead of living from a place of internal conflict, we have the opportunity to live from a place of wholeness and care. And when I say wholeness, I mean just, being willing and able to hold our entire being, rather than just wanting to be parts of ourselves and wanting to not be the other parts. And that ends up feeling like internal conflict. Norman Fisher takes it a step further, talking about compassion. He says, the reason we're often not there for others is that we're not here for ourselves. Entire parts of us, he says, are so unwanted that whenever they arise, we run away. He says, only to the degree that we've gotten to know our own pain, only to the degree that we've related to pain at all, will we be fearless and brave enough to be willing to feel the pain of others. And in awakening the heart, that's what we're working up to. We're not starting there, but to being willing to be with the pain of others. I mean, this is not so easy. So we have to start at home. So this is compassion. This is my definition of compassion: being willing to relate to pain in a healthy way. So most of us avoid pain, our own pain and that of other beings. And that's natural in some ways, because, it can be scary and unpleasant, but this training is a way to reorient ourselves to be skillful with pain, so we can work to improve our relationships by exploring the parts of life that are unwanted. So we also need to train in self-love as a foundation of our orientation toward the world. So here's the question: do we want to live as if we are vulnerable, separate agents in a hostile world? Because I think, when you read the news, that's how people are living. They feel like vulnerable, separate agents in a hostile world, and they're sort of protecting, there's lots of great stuff in the paper too, actually, occasionally anyway. but it's happening in real life all the time where people aren't being that way. But, you can tell when someone does feel that way, that they're sort of protecting their being from the world as the way they move through life. And the question is, do we want to do that? Do we want to move through the world armored against other people? So that's a recipe for a life of conflict, alienation, and loneliness. If we instead orient ourselves as powerful agents of care and connection in the world, our lives will be both more meaningful and more enjoyable. So to make this turn, we can find the depths of our own ability to care about ourselves and so to care about others, because it's the same capacity that we're tapping into. The Tibetans call loving kindness one of the 4 immeasurables, meaning we have an endless supply. You don't run out of loving kindness. In fact, the more you use it, the easier it is to access. So it's the opposite of a limited supply. And it's considered to be our nature, which is fantastic news. So we don't have to add caring to our being. Instead, we just remove the obstacles to its natural expression. That's the theory. I believe it to be true, but again, look for yourself over time and see what you think. So what are the obstacles to this natural expression of loving kindness on a moment-to-moment basis? Blame, resentment, and both of those things ultimately boil down to fear. So once we train in the habit of turning to love instead of to fear, we can awaken to our connection to all beings. We can begin to slowly and gently disarm our hearts and see other people more clearly and more kindly. We can start to learn to speak in ways that are more likely to be heard and to make others feel safe so that they can disarm their hearts too. And this is the beginning of a movement toward a harmonious and caring world. So it turns out that our armoring isn't helpful. You know, we're doing it because we think it is on some level, consciously or unconsciously, but it actually keeps us trapped in a prison of our own making. So the practice uncovers the places we've been causing our separation from others and helps us to heal our own wounding. And this is why the Buddha said, the greatest protection in all the world is loving kindness. It's such a powerful sentence. Protection, when I first heard that, I was just like, what's he talking about? But this is what he's talking about, protection from our own places where we're causing our own suffering, actually. Alan Wallace describes it this way. He says, loving kindness is just a spacious, wholesome sense of well-being. He says there's a power to it, an excellence and a strength that's a fine way to be alive. So to sum up, the first step in living a harmonious and meaningful life, using Lojong training, is to train to tolerate our own experience and to care about it. These are the preliminaries for Tonglen practice. But if this is all that we took away from this retreat, right, like that would be satisfactory, because it's the foundations also for happiness and well-being, not just for these trainings. So, and these foundations, you know, this isn't a beginner group here, but this isn't something that you train in and complete, right? This is a lifelong cultivation that we can continue growing and deepening and broadening until the end of our lives. Comments, thoughts, questions on any of that? So let's do a little practice in mindfulness and in self-love as the foundation for and it'll be a little bit tweaked maybe from what we've done before because it's going to be the foundation for the Tonglen. So we'll start working with the breath at some point during it too. So take your time finding your comfortable posture, your comfortable seat. And when you're ready, we'll close your eyes. So let's begin by dropping our minds into our body. And we'll gather our attention around the relaxed breathing. So the belly softens to allow the breath to settle into a natural rhythm. And we use this gentle rise and fall of the breath, the sensations of the breath, as a way to collect the mind. And we're not forcing the mind to do anything. This is very gentle. But we are cultivating a quality of alertness. So we are paying attention in a relaxed way. I'd like you to, the best of your ability, to center yourself in spaciousness, in clarity, in presence, in well-being, in stillness, and in compassion. And to encourage this relaxed, spacious sense of presence, you might ask yourself gently, can I be with this moment as it is right now? It's like an invitation. Can I be with this moment as it is right now? Notice any craving for this moment to be different in any way. Without denying the craving, see if you can accept this experience as it is. Notice any aversion to this moment as it is. Without suppressing or denying the aversion, see if you can accept the experience as it is. And from the depth of your being, from your calm center, relax any remaining craving or insisting that this moment be different than it is, however strong or however subtle. Now bring anything that's present that you find challenging into greater and greater awareness, to experience it directly and clearly with kindness. Don't try to get rid of the difficult sensation or thought or emotion. ask yourself softly, what would be a more caring, loving way to be than insisting that this moment be different? Tenderly, gently, allow this moment to be as it is. Allow any emotions to be as they are. Don't judge any part of your experience. Rest here in this moment as it is. Now I'd like you to bring to mind a person you know for whom you find it easy to feel friendliness and love. It feels good just to think about this person. And I'd like you to look closely at your attitude toward them. Notice how you hold them in esteem and find them worthy of happiness. And now like you to see if you can hold that same attitude toward yourself. See yourself as valuable and worthy of kindness and respect. Generously offer yourself goodwill in such a way that the attitude itself is both satisfying and meaningful. And now you could say to yourself silently, may I be well and truly happy. May I be well and truly happy. If you want to tweak the phrase, it can be different, but that's the general intention. May I be well and truly happy. And now I'd like you to use your imagination. And on your natural exhale, allow the wishes for your own well-being to radiate from your heart center throughout your body. So on that natural exhale, now you might say, may I be well and truly happy, and feel it radiate. Again, use your imagination from the center of the chest throughout the body. So offer yourself kindness with each exhale. Allow the goodwill and love toward yourself to permeate and saturate your body. May I be well and truly happy. Marinate in the sense of respect and care. Intuit and feel that the nature of your heart is a boundless wellspring of loving kindness. May I be well and truly happy. And now we'll release the phrases and return to the very simple practice of being with the sensations of breathing. So, any comments or thoughts or questions about the meditation or about anything from today? Jennifer.
I hope I don't get emotional, but I probably will. Um, I had a really hard. I was with you up until, and I was with you when you said, uh, find someone who you can give loving kindness to without hesitation. Someone you hold in high esteem, no problem. I was not expecting you to turn that towards us, and I couldn't do it. I curled up like an armadillo. That's the way my husband describes me. Tough on the outside, but his big old soft belly. And I tried and I tried, and then I said, okay, it's okay, it's okay. You can stop trying. So I literally felt an implosion, like, and I've never felt that before. So first of all, I'm grateful to you for that, because wow, there's a lot of room for growth there. But what do you do? Like what?
Slow. Yeah, a little bit at a time.
Yeah.
Yeah. But like on the other side, like, wow, is this going to feel nice? You know?
Yeah. 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 And it was weird. I sort of could approach it from the outsides and sort of work my way in.
Yeah.
And you're saying if it's hard for you to be in this moment, that let that be okay. So I went back when I had this implosion and said, it's okay. But wow. Wow.
That's perfect practice. I love that I can totally see being around the edges. I love that. And then to use the mindfulness to not judge what's going on, don't make it wrong, and just kind of go slow and give it time. And I think often the biggest part is seeing it, actually. Like
Wow.
seeing for the first time something that, because I've had plenty of moments like that. We were like, holy wow, like I didn't realize I was even, yeah, feeling that way. And that's sort of like the hardest moment almost, because your stomach drops to the floor and you think, oh my goodness, how is this even the case? But then once you sort of accustom yourself to it, then working around the edges like that, go slow. Yeah, you're already on the path for it.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for that. Yeah. Felt like I was jumping off a skyscraper, but
Yeah.
yeah. Wow. Thank you.
And it's not just you, just know that we have been conditioned that way as a culture, which is why that's a preliminary I picked rather than some of this Tibetan stuff that makes a lot more sense if you're Tibetan.
Right.
This is what makes sense if you're American.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah. Anything else?
I really loved when we turned that moment where you turned it, like turned it towards ourselves. I also can feel resistance there. It's a resistance that I've felt for a decade, like every time. And also just how your words of like just happiness and I can't even remember exactly what they were, but the thing is that I was repeating those to myself. And I think that sometimes that's all I need is to have like a little bit of a mantra with my breath. I don't have to have any goal. It doesn't have to look like, oh, all of a sudden I had self love. It's just, I'll breathe in love, I'll breathe out peace. And just repeat that. And when you do that for me, when you give me those words, it's even more powerful because I disconnect from my head even that much more.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that.
For me, the experience of it was I've done these practices before. And so I got to see that it's grown, it's changed, right? I'm still not like, there's still like definitely pockets, some bigger than others, and aspects where there's easier self love, easier happiness, easier integration of all of that. But then things kept coming to mind. Like people would just like their image would just pop into my mind, and I'd be like, oh, yeah, I don't have that for myself or for that person in that situation, right? Like, it was like, oh. And then some things with work, I was like, oh, I can feel how it's like, but if I really love and honor and, all this self love, like, how is that going to change this? And like, ooh, then it got contracted, and then it would be like, ooh, and then I'd do what you were saying, Jennifer, and kind of go with those edges and be like, okay, just keep coming back, keep coming back. But really beautiful to see that it has changed over the years. There's so much more self-love going on than the first time that I practiced these techniques. So pretty cool.
Yeah. Beautiful. Thank you. Anything else?
Just one more thing. It's just so beautiful to be here with everyone and to do this and to take the time to do it. So thank you, Karen, for doing this. And, everything that you were saying, I was trying to write down notes, but some of the quotes are just so amazing. And like all of your information is just so good. And then to practice with other people is different. It just is different. And it's wonderful to hear everyone else's experiences. And most of the time you guys say it so well. I'm just impressed by the sharing. So thank you.
You're welcome to any quotes at any time. Just ask and I'll email them so you don't have to write them down. Sometimes they're short and it's not a big deal, and sometimes it's just not worth it. So I'm going to leave you each day with 2 quotes. I started doing that with the basics of Buddhism and I enjoy it. So first is the Buddha. He said, "Whoever loves himself will never harm another." And it's another one of these quotes that I heard the first time and I was like, whatever. And I come back to it every few years with a little more inkling of how that might be true. So, and then the second one's from Glennon Doyle. And she says, being human is not hard because you're doing it wrong. It's hard because you're doing it right. You will never change the fact that being human is hard. So you must change your idea that it was ever supposed to be easy. Thank you. I'll see you tomorrow.